Welcome back, everybody, to our inventory system. How to make one. Let's do it. I'm going to be using Unity 2D, continuing on from the sandbox series, because I think it's just easier to implement it onto that. However, this will work for any type of game, regardless, 3D, 2D, as long as you are able to convert it to that sort of space. If you have any questions on how to do that and etc., join the Discord. Link is below. Join it now. Me, the mod team, the helpers, all that, we're there to help you and support you as you wish. So if you do wish to use this somewhere else and you're having issues, then just join that. Ask us there. We'll be happy to help. Anyway, let's get straight into it. So I'm creating a new C# script and I'm going to call this inventory. Just like that. So this inventory script is going to control literally every single thing in our inventory. It's going to contain everything. However, it needs a type of, let me open that script up. It needs a class or something that, a slot, essentially, a slot class. So each inventory slot can have this. So it needs to contain the item or block class that it is, the amount of blocks/items there is in that slot, as well as things like its name and etc. So how can we do that? Well, we're going to need to create another class, and this class is going to be our inventory slot class. So the inventory class is going to be made up of inventory slot classes, if that makes sense. So let's create this another C# script, and I'm going to call this inventory slots. This will make a little bit more sense as we go further down the road of inventory and all that. So this inventory, it is not gonna be of that. It's not gonna be of this. But it needs a couple of values. So the first thing it needs is a public vector to int, I think, position. Whether we'll use this or not is a different question, but I'm gonna add it just for now, just in case. I want a public int quantity. And then a public block class, is it tile class? Yes, tile class. Tile class, and I'll just call this block. So block is optional. It might not be a block, it might be a tool in that class. So that's just something we have to determine. So that we will also have another class like the tile class, but for items specifically. Anyway, for now, let's leave that there. In fact, yeah, let's leave that there for now. Let's go back to our inventory script. And in here, I'm going to create a public int array, but this is a 2D array. And this 2D array, in each position, it's going to contain an inventory slot. So in fact, I did this wrong. This should be an inventory slots 2D array. And I'm going to call this inventory slots, just like that. Can't equal anything for now. And then public void start. In here, we're going to declare it. So let me just get rid of this blank line, change this to private, actually. There we go. And this script is going to sit underneath our player controller as well, by the way. But let's just define this. So let's say public int inventory width, and then public int inventory height. So this is the number of slots on the x-axis, number of slots on the y-axis. And that's fine for now. Why is this giving an error? It's not good. So inventory slots is going to equal a new inventory slot array. It has to be 2D, so it's going to be inventory width, and then comma inventory height, just like that. Nice and easy. So we're also going to set up the UI here. So void set up UI, and we're going to write this script later. But to actually get this script working, we need a couple of things. So first thing we need to do is add using Unity engine.ui. So that's going to set up, that's going to draw the user interface of our inventory from the blocks and the panels and all that. So from the slots and all that. That's good for now. In our inventory slots, actually no, let's set this up in Unity first. Pass it onto there. So let's clear the console, go to our player root object, and I'm just going to drag and drop our inventory script onto it. Inventory width, I'll say about 9, and I would say 4. Just like that. And then I'll just go to overrides and press apply all, just so this applies to our prefab. Very nice. So Our player controller actually has this selected tile here as well. So the selected tile is actually going to equal a value from within our inventory is another thing to pay attention to. So to make things a little bit more easy now, I'm going to create our inventory layout or our inventory canvas essentially, so it stays on a separate layer of UI. So we go to UI canvas, so create UI canvas, yep, just like this. I'm going to call this inventory, if I can spell, inventory UI. Screen space overlay is fine. Constant pixel size, we're going to change to scale with screen size. Match should be around 0.5, and that should be fine for now. So this is our canvas in here. We want to create a panel within this canvas, and inside that panel, we want to have slots stretching from one side to the other side. So let's do that, shall we? In our inventory user interface, the thing we want to do is we would love for this to be more customizable, but for the sake of creating an inventory system, I'm not going to worry about that. So we're just going to go to UI, right click it, press create UI, and I'm going to say panel for now. So panel can stay as it is. I'm going to go here, hold Alt, Shift, and press the center option here. And now we can easily mess around with the width. So I might reduce the width to about, let's say about there. And I'll reduce the height a little bit to about there. Just like that. And then let's make this 500 just so it's a whole number. And we'll do 340 just so it's a whole number as well. So now you can see that our inventory looks like this. I might increase the opacity of this panel a little bit, just like that. And that looks pretty good. So with that done, we need to create some slots. So obviously, currently, we don't have any slots. It's just a plain panel, which is not very interesting. So on top of the panel, real quick, I'm going to say create UI text. And this text, I'm just going to call title there. And then here, I'm going to make the text say inventory. Scroll up again, click on this center middle, this sort of rect transform adjust thingy. I don't know what it's actually called. Anchor presets, I guess. Hold Alt, Shift, and then press the top option, just like that. I might decrease the pause height a little bit, just like that. Set this to center, make this fully black text. Again, customize this however you want. I just want to get this going. So yeah, that's fine for me. I might even make this bold and then leave it at that. There we go. Very nice, simple setup canvas for our inventory. So we just need to set that up in the player controller, or rather even our inventory script. But just to keep our controls consistent, I'll probably chuck this in the player controller script here. So let's have a public inventory. And our inventory is going to take in a couple of functions such as add, remove, and all that, for example. But we'll add those later. So public inventory, nice. And then here in the start function, I'm going to say inventory equals get component inventory, just like that. Very nice. And then we would need a way to set the inventory active and inactive via our code. So inside our inventory real quick, I know there's a lot of back and forth, but that's just how it is. So we're going to create a public game object inventory UI, just like that. And now in our update function, in fact, we'll put it here. Let's create another bool here, public bool inventory showing. And we'll say equals false. And then in our update function, I'll put it right above where we set the animations. I'm going to say inventory dot inventory UI dot set active to inventory showing. Cool. So that's a very important line. That's what's going to determine whether it's showing or not. And then where we take our inputs right here, I'm going to say very simply if input dot get key down, and then I'll put key code dot e. Very simply, it's going to say is showing. Inventory showing equals not inventory showing. So basically, every time I click E, it's going to invert the value of inventory showing. Make sure this is get key down, so otherwise it will flash every single time. This will mean that every time I press E once, it's just going to either make it show or hide. So now let's set that up in our in Unity. So click on your player root object, drag and drop your inventory UIs into that slot there on the inventory script. Make sure you apply that to the prefab and then press play. And you'll see once this loads, you'll see that this panel actually disappears. And every time we press E, we will be able to make it disappear and come back. So as you can see, press E and it works perfectly. So just like that, we're already getting going. So now we just need a way to make it so in the start function, we set up UI. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to call setup UI in the start method. Now we need a public game object inventory slot prefab. And what this is just a UI image essentially, which can generate in our inventory depending on the number of slots we have. You want to keep the number of slots pretty minimal. What this does, it basically stops us from manually having to adjust each slot essentially. And in fact, I'm going to have a public game object 2D array, which is UI slots. And then I'm going to set UI slots equals new game object 2D array with the size of inventory width and inventory height. So there we go, setting things up slowly, getting there. And what this means, it means we're going to be able to set the images quite easily just by referencing the position of each slot. So let's go back to our inventory UI. Underneath panel, I want to create another 2D, UI, and I'll create let's do a panel first. And then I'm going to set this rect anchor to be Alt Shift middle again. Width, I'll say 50 by 50 maybe. Background, I'm going to make this black, just like that. And I'm going to call this slot, just like that. In fact, 50 might be a bit much. So this is what your slot's going to look like in game, each slot in your inventory. So let's do that. And then inside inventory slot, I'm going to create a UI image. And this image can just stay as image. And then again, press this Alt Shift middle again. In fact, we'll press Alt Shift and then this bottom corner one here, which means it stretches to the very end. And what this means now, if I change this sprite to something like X, you can see that here, if I zoom in, is low quality because I'm in the game view, but you can see that it looks very nicely in there. If I change it to grass, however, you'll see that it takes up the whole image, which is not very ideal. So all we have to do is just say 5, 5, 5, and 5 on each axis, and that means it fits nicely there, and you'll see that it works well with pretty much every single tile and object, which is perfect. So for now, let's set this to none. It will come up as white, but that's fine. We don't have to change anything here either, and yeah, so that is fine for now. Let's close this, and then let's drag and drop the slot into our assets menu. You'll see that creates a prefab here. We can now delete it from there. And then in our player root, we want to set the inventory slot prefab to our slot that we just created. Okay, so now we have to find a way to duplicate the amount of slots inside of the panel here and also set them up here. So let's create a loop. It's going to be the easiest way. For an x equals 0, x less than inventory width, x plus plus. And then for int y equals 0, y less than inventory height, y plus plus. And now we can just duplicate our inventory slot very easily. So we can say instantiate inventory slot prefab. The position for now, we'll just say it to be vector2 dot 0 transform dot. So the parent should actually be our inventory UI dot get child. Sorry, dot transform dot get child 0 dot transform. Did I do that right? Sorry, this should be quaternion dot identity first. So quaternion dot identity, so that keeps the rotation, and then transform the parent. Very nice. Okay, so then we can just add a semicolon there. And then I might do vector2.1 times. In fact, let's just do this for now, just to keep things a little bit consistent. Let's just say new vector2 x y. That won't work as we want it. It will show what it's meant to do at least a little bit. In fact, before we run that as well, let's do this as well. Let's say UI slots x y equals. In fact, we might have to do this. Okay, let's do this. New. All right. So game object inventory slots equals this. Control X, Control V. Very nice. And then we can just say equals inventory slot there. Alrighty. Now that should be okay. And then let's say inventory slots, here, inventory slots X, Y equals null for now. All right. Okay, so let's save that, head back into Unity. And let's just press run and see what that does. Okay, so I've run it, and you can see that we have a bunch of slots appearing here now, but we can't actually see them here. So why is that? It's because they're all down here. So we haven't actually set them to be here yet. And you know why that's happening? It's because rect transforms are actually different to regular transforms in their coordinate system. So that's something we didn't take note of, which is why I said this wouldn't work anyway. So let's say we can get rid of this, and we can get rid of this. Just like that. And then all I'm going to do is just say inventory slots dot get component. Inventory slots dot get component. There we go. Rect transform. This one there. Dot. Is it dot position dot x equals x, I think. Sorry. Dot position equals new vector 3, and then this will be x and y, and we don't have to pass in a z because that's going to default to 0. Okay. And now that should be okay. Let's clear that and press play again. Sorry, my bad. This should be local position. All right, so we've spawned in. I've opened the inventory, and you can see that they all start spawning here now. And they are actually in the right position, theoretically. But obviously, since this now uses pixel coordinates rather than world coordinates, they look very close together. In which case, I mean, it's correct. It works. But we just now have to find a way to make this larger. So let's head back into our code. And what we're going to do is say create a few variables here. So public vector2 offset, and then a public vector2 modifier. We'll call it. You know what? Let's just call this multiplier. That's the word I was looking for. Multiplier. There we go. So now we're just going to say inventory source this x times multiplier dot x plus offset dot x. And then we're going to do the same for y. So it's going to be y times multiplier dot y plus offset dot y. So the offset will most likely be a negative number, but negative plus a positive, sorry, positive plus a negative equals negative anyway. So that will be fine. For the multiplier, I might do, I think it is 40, the width and height. So the multiplier should roughly be around the same width and height as this, I believe. Let's leave it as 40 for now. We'll see how that goes. And then I might set the offset to be negative something, maybe negative 100 and negative 50 for now. And we'll just see how that looks. If it's not perfect, it doesn't matter. I just want to see the slots generating on our inventory properly. So there we go. So I've opened it up and you can see that we get a whole bunch of slots here. I think the multiplier we could probably increase to around 45, maybe 50, just so there is a bigger gap here. And then the offset we should probably increase on these x-axis. I think the height is fine. Actually, we'll mess around with these values a little bit and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have messed around with values and this is what I've created so far. And personally, I'd say this is fine for our purposes. This looks great. And yeah, issue is, of course, these pictures here, although they don't have a sprite, they are currently just completely white. It would be great if we could have it so that these pictures, if there was no tiles on them, they would just be invisible. Therefore, you just see the gray empty slot. So let's do that real quick. We're going to create another void. And this is going to be called update inventory. Inventory UI, actually, is a better way to put it. So what this is going to do, we're going to call this every time we add, remove something from the inventory or move, etc. And that's just going to reset all the sprites in our user interface. So let's call that here as well. Update inventory UI. And what this is going to do is going to loop through each game object. So again, we're going to copy this, Control C, Control V, delete all the contents in here. That's fine. And then here I'm going to say inventory slots. I think it's UI, is it? Yes, UI slots. Get rid of that. UI slots. X, Y equals null. I'm just going to do that for now, just so we can write the if statement for it. So if UI slots, inventory slots X, Y is not equal to, is equal to null. There we go. If it's equal to null, then that equals null. That is fine. And then the other thing we have to do is say, so else UI slots equals inventory slots X, Y. Now that's not going to work, so I'm going to set this up a little bit better. So UI slots should be dot get dot transform dot get child 0. So it gets the actual picture, because if you remember how we set the slots up, we have the slot. That's our slot game object, but that's the actual image sprite. So we have to get the first child in the list, which is child 0, since counting starts at 0. So get child 0 dot get components image. This should be dot image dot sprite equals null. So if there is no sprite there, then it equals null. Otherwise, we're going to copy this line, paste it over this line, which Control C and V, and that's going to equal inventory slots X, Y dot block dot tile drop, so that the thing we display is actually the tile drop, of course. Now, what if we don't have a tile there? It's a item. We're going to set that up a little bit later once we create our item classes. But for now, we're just going to setting up the basic functionality. And the other thing I actually want to do is, rather than setting it to the tile drop, now that it came to my mind, I should set it to just their tile sprites, because what if the user has for example, grass in their inventory. It doesn't have a tile drop, but he's able to have it in his inventory still. So let's say block dot tile sprites, and then I'm just going to say 0 there. So that'll fix that issue. And of course, if he doesn't have a block, then that's going to return a null reference exception. So we have to have this if statement here. But what we don't need to do is have it so that the image is always showing. All we have to do is right above, after we set the sprite and all that, we're just going to say, so below this one and above this one, we're going to set it so that UI slots xy dot set active false. And then copy that and paste that here. And this should be set active true. But rather than setting it active to false and true, what that does, it disables the game object. Will be really handy if we just disable the image component. So we can also do that by doing another method, which is slightly better because it means we can still access the other components on that object if we needed to, which is basically just going to say get component image dot enabled equals false. It's slightly longer, but it will allow us to still access other things on that game object and change it to value, seeing as it's just disabled that component, which means the image, there's nothing there, but the object itself still exists. So I've run the code, open my inventory, and you can see now we have a bunch of nice empty slots. So it's going well so far. Now I've been recording for a while, so I might leave that episode here. And in the next episode, what we're going to do is have it so that we can start adding and removing stuff from our inventory and have it actually reflect on our inventory itself. So yeah, we'll do that in the next episode. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.